I'm Dean Jones. This is News You Can Use. Today we're going to unpack the trend lines that are leading to the headlines, and everyone's talking about House Bill 1110. To my right is Tadashi Shiga, the Executive Director for our land division of Realogics Sotheby's International Realty, and also business partner with Ofer Avnery in their new venture called Realty here in Washington State. Tadashi, Ofer, welcome. Let's get right into it. What is House Bill 1110 in a nutshell?
House Bill 1110 is the biggest upzone in our history and pretty much in our lifetime in Washington State. Something that I'm so excited for because it's going to allow more density, more affordability, more attainability all across Washington State.
So essentially, it's that old adage of 1 + 1 = 3, but in this case, it's 1 + 1 = 10, because you could take a single family lot and put 4 dwelling units on it, or maybe upwards of 6 dwelling units on it. And there's a ton of legislation behind this. I mean, Ofer, you've done the research as an owner of this company, as also the president and a user. You've actually successfully found upzoning in your backyard. Tell us what your role is and what are municipalities doing right now, and when is it due by, so that we could see fundamental changes to land use?
Right. So the state legislation requires the municipalities to adopt the new upzone by June 30th. So that means we have only 5 months until every city in Washington State that is required to meet the standard, they need to change their legislation, and they are not allowed to do any single family zoning anymore. My city, Redmond, was the first to adopt the legislation, which kicked in on January 1st earlier this year, and it changed the landscape of Redmond forever. So now, for example, instead of being able to build one house on your half an acre lot, you can go ahead and build 4 or 6, or in some cases even 8. Unheard of in Redmond, which is usually mostly single family homes.
It's remarkable because the old adage of NIMBY, right, not in my backyard, it quite literally is in your backyard. I mean, we are changing where you could put additional dwelling units. Tadashi, what is an ADU and a DADU, and explain for the audience?
Attached dwelling unit.
Okay.
And DADU means detached dwelling unit. Basically, one is going to be attached to the house, like it could have before been like the mother-in-law unit, or now it could be an actual attached to the house. And the DADU is basically a backyard cottage, up to about 1,000 square feet, depending on the municipalities.
So effectively, Governor Inslee wanted to increase the housing density in what is otherwise a omnipresent single-family zoning. Like, just give us some perspective. In the city of Seattle, what percentage of our land mass is single-family zoning?
So here's the main crux of the whole problem with affordability in Seattle is that over 3/4 of all the zoning in Seattle is dedicated to just single-family zoning. And that's the problem. When other cities, compared to other cities of San Francisco, LA, and so forth like that, there's more single-family zoning here that creates that high demand for more upzone. And this is why real estate is so expensive here. And when we talk about attainability is it's getting more and more out of the reach of the normal person working here in Seattle. Like, take example, 40 years ago, like in 1984, the median income was like $22,000. But a house at that time, you could buy for $78,000. It was basically like 3 to 4 times your annual income. Right now, the median income is $120,000, but the price of an average home is about $900,000. That means it's almost 7 times your annual income. So each year, it's getting more out of the reach of the people who actually want to live here.
Right.
House Bill 1110, is going to help to try to change that.
Well, and it's going to take a lot of legislation at the municipalities. I mean, Ofer, you studied this. You're an expert in artificial intelligence. You have been able to unpack an incredible amount of detail as it relates to zoning and setbacks and parking requirements and massing studies. I mean, there's a lot that goes into the building blocks of what might become in your backyard. How are you going to keep up with all of these changes with all these different municipalities?
The devil is in the details, and each municipality is in charge of its own legislation and own zoning laws. So we have a team that basically listens in to the legislation, to the committee meetings, and we keep ourselves updated with the legislation. So when it actually passes, when they vote on it, we're already ready behind the scenes. Sometimes we have to come up with new algorithms to analyze the potential. For example, the new legislation in Redmond introduced new type of restrictions and limits that we didn't know before in Washington. It's not based on floor area ratio at all, for example. We taught our AI to look at the new zoning and understand it.
I imagine there's going to be municipal governance that is releasing this data on a weekly or for certain a monthly basis. I mean, they've only got 5 months left to say, here's what we're doing to allow this kind of fundamental zoning upzone in our backyards. As it relates to that, I mean, Tadashi, you have many years experience in land development and land assembly for infill builders. Is this going to be a situation where the land value could become more important and more valuable than the house itself, and it could be a make-me-move moment for a lot of owners?
We believe in some cases, when we did the back tracking of the data of the research right now, it's probably about 10 to 20% of the real estate deals where the land value is actually probably worth more than the house that is standing there currently right now.
It's fascinating because I think there's a lot of folks that might be sitting on the gold mine in their backyard and not even realizing it, especially as it relates to light rail. So walk us through general legislation there, Ofer. If the property is within a certain distance of a light rail or rapid transit system, there's potential for even more density.
Basically, the allowed density is the same. Let's say you're allowed to do 6 units on your lot in Redmond. However, the default requirement is to have 2 parking spaces per unit. So if you need to build 12 parking spaces, you're taking a whole lot of space that you can maybe build 2 more units. So it's not limited by code, but when you are close to a light rail station or a frequent transit center, as they define it, you get a waiver from the parking, either completely or at least partially, at least in Redmond. So that lets you build, let's say, maybe an small apartment building or townhomes without parking. And since you're close to frequent transit, you don't have to maybe buy a car. So that gives you more ability to build more units inside this property.
There's so many possibilities of what that legislation might be, and it's going to take a team of experts to unpack and advise that. So walk me through, Tadashi, what was the genesis of Realty and what experience are you bringing to the table with your leadership and with your other advisors that are part of this redevelopment stack, really?
Basically, the genesis was meeting Ofer about 8 years ago. He created a program back then that studied the upzoning of Seattle, the MHA zoning. And he acquired with some investors, about 28 properties. Then he came into my office. So I created a company called Evergreen Certified about 16 years ago, where my dream at that time was to build the most energy efficient and sustainable homes in the world right here in Seattle. People thought I was absolutely crazy for thinking about that. Fast forward to today, we've certified over thousands of homes in Seattle and worked with 300 builders throughout this incredible country. And that's when Ofer came into my office. And then when Ofer came to my office, he started talking to me about his technology that he did. And then I said, what did you build? You built this technology that was able to analyze all these properties that everybody thought were complicated. And that's when I said, I had to become friends with Ofer.
And hence Realty is born. And so it's 2 parts. It's the technology and the analysis of all the zoning, which includes communications with prospective sellers, right? And then playing matchmaker with prospective builders, developers. It's a whole ecosystem that you have to bring in to bear. And, you know, it's not a perfect Tetris game. Every lot's a little different, isn't it?
Devil's in the details, and it really does take a village of incredible people to build housing in Seattle and the Northwest. And my experience by working on so many projects is that you have to have the team around you that can give you the right advice, and the right builders, and also the public and private sectors have to work together. The public and private sectors are basically like 2 legs, right? In these 2 legs, if you want to go somewhere far and fast, you have to be in sync. But sometimes the public and private sectors are a bit too busy trying to kick each other. We need to create a world, especially in this Northwest, because we are in a crisis for affordability in the Northwest and across the country. Take example of this. If you have a medical crisis, if you're having a heart attack right now, do you want the ambulance to come faster or slower? Yeah. in a housing crisis, we should be delivering housing faster than slower, and work together, the private and public sectors, if we really want to tackle this problem.
Well, and where is the infrastructure where people want to live? It is in the established neighborhoods. It is just fundamentally changing how we look at real estate, and it's going to change property values across the entire state. But it's only in the larger municipalities where this mandate is in place, right? Ofer, what was the backdrop on that? I believe it's cities, municipalities that are 75,000.
Yeah, there are several tiers, and the biggest cities, 75 people or more, most housing. So they're required to do 4, 6, 8, and 50 to 75,000, they're required to do up to 4, and then it goes down. So the bigger the city is, the denser the requirement is to become.
You know, this is familiar to me because about 25 years ago when I came from Vancouver, BC, there's a lot of very progressive zoning changes there. And the streets that had single-family homes or duplexes are now all multifamily, 45 or even taller, massing studies allowed. And there's a major transit system, and everywhere the transit lines ended, those stations became a multi-family mecca. Basically, new cities were born. And I just wonder if that's the road that we're on here with House Bill 1110 eventually, and potential other upzones in municipalities.
Well, we hope so. That will make a more sustainable city, for sure. You know, currently right now, Seattle is in a budget deficit. We have $260 million in budget deficit because we have reduced amount of income from real estate, from tourism, and from utilities where our government gets their budget from. But I believe that this upzone can invigorate Seattle and the surrounding areas. I've been living in Seattle for all my life. I love Seattle. And I remember when Seattle was the city of the Emerald City, right? How many of us have heard of people calling Seattle the Emerald City lately?
Yeah.
It's has a little bit of black eye right now. But I believe with these measures, we can get back our city. We can bring back families back into our towns. And with that, and with Realty and partnerships with Realogics, I believe we can accomplish this mission so that we can be that shining city on that hill, that Emerald Star again.
It's so needed because the missing middle has been difficult to accomplish, and that is, you know, it's not subsidized housing or low-income housing, and it's certainly not market rate housing that is attainable, right? I mean, that missing middle is the mid-tier of price points and product types. I mean, people can afford to live in less space, but they can't afford to pay more than they can pay. And I just don't know any other way to get the inventory into our municipalities other than significant upzones in large multifamily projects like a high-rise condominium or apartment building. The problem there is they can take 5 to 7 years, depending from initial concept to final closings. In this case, with House Bill 1110, I mean, it sounds like we're going to be able to pull permits for our backyards and develop little communities, little cottages in the backyard.
Yeah. You know, imagine you're going for the single-family permitting process shouldn't take more than 5-6 months, as opposed to 18 months that it could usually take with the multifamily project. And instead of building one big 4,200 square foot home, you can actually build 6 smaller 1,200, 1,400 square foot homes. These are so much easier to build, so much quicker to build. And also when you build a 1,200 or 1,400 square foot home, you invest less in the finishes compared to a 4,200 square foot home that needs to be luxury in order to make it justified. With the smaller one, you can appeal to, as you said, the middle housing, more affordable housing. You don't have to fill it up with the fanciest finishes. So it's quicker, cheaper to build.
Well, I would imagine this is a new sort of space race, if you will, for the municipalities, because they're going to be in competition with their zoning bylaws, making it more attractive. They want that density. They want those permit fees. They want the taxes, the enrollment in the schools, et cetera. I mean, why haven't there been more progressive, and I would even say aggressive municipal bylaws released yet? I mean, we're only 5 months away from permits being pulled, and yet Redmond is the only one to say, here's what I'm all about.
Redmond did set the bar. The other ones will follow, and hopefully that they are as progressive as Redmond, but at least they started it. Yeah, I'm also very shocked. I'm shocked that the different municipalities are not competing and trying to welcome and actually have more density to welcome businesses, to welcome builders, and to welcome homeowners into their cities. But I'm up for that challenge, and I cannot wait to help these cities grow and grow vibrantly.
Well, what's so interesting, you and your partner have already gone through the ecosystem in Redmond as an investor. You and your AI technology has generated prospective sellers. You have contracted to purchase. You're in the process of designing, infill housing using that exact zoning. So in some cases, you're not just the president, but you're also the client with your own technology. What sort of infrastructure, technology-wise, and what is the experience that Realty is providing for the seller, the would-be seller, as well as the broker and the would-be buyer, which might be a home builder?
Basically, we're combining several channels of communication. We're using AI to be able to try and predict which homeowners, which sellers have a good chance of wanting to sell, and we reach out to them and have the AI make a conversation with them. And we work also in traditional wave, but the AI helps us be more specific, more contextual, and more persistent with following up with the leads, instead of just sending old yellow letters and not even knowing if they're getting thrown to trash, spending a lot of money on them. The AI knows to track the communications, and when someone is interested to actually explore the opportunity of selling their home, then they actually speak with a human being, and the Realty team helps them make a wonderful selling experience.
All of the different municipalities, when HB 1110 is enacted, basically each city has its own requirements, and then it gets become very, very complicated. And let's say, example, if you are you've been in that house for a generation, and now your kids are gone, and then you maybe don't really know very much about real estate, and you don't know that you're sitting on your nest egg, your gold mine that's going to help. Very, very valuable. Realty provides a solution for the sellers so that they can understand what can the development possibilities on that piece of property. It helps out the buyers, because if you're a buyer in today's marketplace, right, in July of this year, and you're looking at a new house, right, wouldn't it be important that you understand what can be possibly built there later on, or what's going to happen to your neighbors, and because then you can see all your options. And then it helps out the brokers so that they can help out their clients. It helps out the investors so that they can understand which properties are the best ones to purchase. And it helps out also the mortgage people and the architects. It helps out the whole built environment collaboration.
I mean, it is a collaboration. I'm looking at our notes from the conversation earlier, and those involved in the ecosystem to cultivate the desired outcome, because you could do this in your own backyard, or you could partner with Realty and do it with one of your solution providers. You need to organize the seller and the buyer through the brokers. You need to identify the architects, the designers, and the engineers, work through the municipalities and all the neighborhood bylaws, all the legal underwriting, identify the developers and contractors to go vertical, and then eventually get through marketing and sales and potentially property management as the new community is built. I mean, there's a lot to unpack, and all of that plays into what is the land residual analysis. What is the value of the opportunity? And that's a lot for a single owner of a property that they may have been sitting on for 20, 30 years, not aware of the zoning changes. And so Realty really becomes an expert advisor. And it's not just the brokerage solution, but you're really bringing a whole team to bear, right? You're in partnership with home builders. You know what fits on land. You know what the cost of construction is. You know what the retail exit value is. So you can work backwards to make a qualified offer on the land value.
AI is critical, but it's also very, very important to make sure that you are paired with intelligent experts who would know the local marketplaces in all aspects of development. And that synergy and the collaboration will make sure that it's a successful project. And we're living in an incredible time right now when this technology was just launched. OpenAI just came out in November 22, right? And look at what's happening right now. It has exponential growth in intelligence. I can't tell you how excited it is to be living in this time.
And how fortunate to have someone like Ofer with your experience. Let's play back. When did you first engage in technology and with AI? You have a bit of a head start on the competition.
Oh yeah, technology age 8 maybe, so it's not fair. It was when we used cassettes, audio cassettes for instead of USB drives. Doing technology for my work just after I graduated, and always did data analytics, data mining, data analysis. And 2011, I sold my company to a publicly traded company, did some money, and moved here to the United States to actually retire from tech and invest in real estate. Little did I know that very quickly I would feel that technology can really help my real estate investment. So I started building the software that we talked about, and fast forward into 2018, it was already ready to go with the Seattle MHA upzone and help us secure more than 20 properties in before the owners knew what they had. AI came to market to the general public like 2 or 3 years ago. It was mind-blowing to us because we had all this amazing infrastructure, all this data, all this information about this property and what we can do with them. But it was always a challenge to speak with the data, talk with it and ask questions. And this is what AI did. It basically unlocked all this amazing data and made it available for the brokers, for the people, for other, not only tech people, not only architects. And that's the amazing thing. And now we can not only communicate about what's the possibilities, we can also do it in mass. So we can look at entire cities, entire neighborhoods, and get conclusions about them and how we can reach out to them.
And it seems to me that between the public records, including using Google Earth-like solutions to look at lots in test fitting on what sort of potential business models could fit in your backyard, I mean, it's an incredible amount of information that needs to be articulated. And perhaps best summarize that the AI is the first mile to get that conversation started, but really the last mile is going to be through a human touch and the team that you're building with your Realty advisors through Realogics, Sotheby's International Realty. And so this is a whole new ecosystem that needs to be trained, and you have a certification program that you're launching now to identify those new brokers.
Yeah, so our first class, we're very excited. It's at February 27th. Yeah, at Realogics, and it's completely full actually right now.
But that's helping to understand the right approach in working with these potential sellers. And some of them may not want to sell, they may want to develop. And you can also make that match with developers or lenders, designers, engineers, and so on and so forth.
It goes from like, hey, let's take example, you have a homeowner and then you want to actually build something dad do in your backyard. We can help through that whole process. If you want to analyze it and maybe cut off that backyard and sell it off to a builder, we can also help you out with that too. Or if you want to take that and figure out wealth management, we have experts that can help you figure out what your next move is.
Well, including the tax implications, because I imagine there's a lot of capital gains in some of these land portfolios as well, and that could be a deterrent to making a move, is to say, hey, that's great, that's going to be a new development for a builder, but what about my exit strategy? I need to buy another home, or I want to not incur a lot of taxable gains in this situation. So there is a lot to unpack. This is probably the most consequential upzoning in the history of Washington State. This is akin to the iPhone being brought to, the world of communications, and it really does matter, the company that you keep to drive forward those results, that you two are really at the front end of this. You're first to market with this kind of technology.
Yeah, we are on both fronts, both the data side, understanding the zoning, understanding the changes, being able to run a feasibility study, not a complete one, but a mini feasibility study on the fly. So that's, no one is able to do that right now. And on the other side, the AI side, getting this data and communicating it and making it available and unlocked for the brokers and the sellers and the builders. I've never seen someone to do that as of yet.
Well, your technology advancement is certainly understood and appreciated, and it would take many, many years to rebuild the platform that you have on the tech stack. And then on the human side, why choose this company? What sort of advantages do you feel that you have with your designated realty advisors that are going to be in these neighborhoods and working with these prospective sellers?
Truly, Realogics was the only choice. When I looked at the marketplace, and if I were to work with any other brokerage, the reason why Realogics is the top choice and the best choice is because of the people. It's the leadership. It's the experts and the dedication to quality and service that all stems from actually you, Dean Jones, and it resonates throughout the whole company. And even though Sotheby's has one of the best recognizable brands in the world, real estate is very local, hyper local, and Realogics is that hyper local experts that understands building, understands new development. You yourself, Dean, is what's very unusual is that you understand development. You are one of the best thought leaders in our industry, and pairing up with you, and it's an honor and a joy, and I can't wait to really take this market to a new level and be that shining star for development in the Northwest.
Well, we set out to do that 5 years ago when we joined forces, and you were going to build this land division within this infrastructure. We provide these opportunities to our brokers who are independent contractors but choose to associate with these advantages. Yeah. And we need to scale, right, Tadashi? This is your first meeting at the end of February, but there will be more because as the waterfall of legislation rolls through these municipalities, as more and more incoming inquiries about what's my land worth, can you help me, in addition to those that through AI we're prospecting directly to, give us a sense, Ofer, of what might become the volume increase in what has otherwise been, wait for it, 30 years, the slowest housing market we have seen in 30 years for a lot of reasons, affordability being a large portion of that. But this could be a bit of a catalyst, fertilizer, if you will, for more transactions. I mean, what are the numbers that you're seeing in the years ahead?
We were doing research trying to estimate the total potential, and we looked at the entire Washington state, cities that are required to do the upzone, and then we assumed only about 20% of the lots would be really buildable. Maybe they're too small, maybe there's already a house on them. So we assumed, let's say, 1 out of 5 can support demolish and rebuild. And when we did that, we found that the equity that will be generated is $756 billion over the time of, let's say, 10 or 20 years that these homes are going to be created, which is more than 1 million homes. And this will all become available in addition from vacant land that was created by this legislation.
And will some of these be offered for sale, or do you feel like most of this new supply will have to fit within a rental portfolio because of the land, the way it's used, or can you condominiumize these individual lots?
Before, most of the new development that's happening in Seattle and the surrounding areas has been, unfortunately, apartments. Yeah. We're building a renting nation right now, and that's an issue. But however, House Bill 1110 is specifically targeted to single-family zoning. So most of the upzone is going to be actual single-family townhomes, and a real missing piece is that condo piece. Because that next rung, if you're a median income of $128,000 as a family right now, and the pricing of real estate's $900,000 in Seattle, but it could be on the east side, $1.2, $1.3, $1.4 million, that's an expensive prospect. But however, we need to add more affordability by having that other option of flats, of condominiums or co-ops and whatnot, which could be, instead of $900,000, wouldn't it be nice to have an option where you can get a house or a flat for $350,000 or $400,000? That option is not there.
Interestingly enough, so one of our other affiliates, Belinda Thornburg, and her husband have a company called Tyatin Cabin Company. And literally this morning, the very first prototype of this engineered home, which is to passive house design quality. These are single family dwellings. You pour 4 posts, your sewer connection, your water and your electrical, and you are sleeping there that night. And the very first home is landing on an island. But it could also land in your backyard, and they can be craned over an existing house. They can be a drive-to destination off a truck, and you could literally have these sort of, I guess that would be a dadu, parked in your backyard. And they're, $200,000, $300,000 depending on you, lots of modulation. But there's an entirely new industry now being created around not having to do stick-built construction in your backyard, which could be almost a lick and stick moment, right? An overnight sort of reality.
Oh, for sure. I love Belinda and also Titan Homes. The quality that they have, and then the aesthetics too. And they build also with CLT cross-laminated timbers, which is carbon sequestration. It's a beautiful product, and it could be one of the tools that helps us with affordability in Seattle for sure.
Because the only other formats that I can think of historically, especially for ownership, would be condominiums. These are studios, urban one-bedrooms that you can build in high volume, in a high-rise, in very dense local locations, but the number of high-rise zoning locations in the Seattle Bellevue metro area are actually very finite. And again, the problem with that kind of construction, type 1 concrete and steel, is it's many, many years. There's other layers of legislation like MHA taxation, and it's just not delivering the kind of quality and quantity that we need overall as quickly as we need it.
And also for condos, there is another issue with condos, and it is the condo warranty thing in Washington, the Condominium Act. And doing some of these, you can do it if you're building a high rise, and then the insurance and the underwriting, paying $1 million for that makes sense. But when you want to build 4, 6, 8 units, the insurance company will not even underwrite you for that. So those small condo buildings are still out of reach, technically and practically speaking.
And that's the problem, but that's also the challenge that as the public and private sectors, that's what we should be working together on and trying to figure out how to solve the liabilities for developers. I'm so proud to know so many of these local builders in Seattle and the surrounding areas. It's a shame that they've been vilified. Quite frankly, because they're like farmers. We would never vilify a farmer for providing food, and but we tend to vilify the builders. But I think if we work together, right? And here's some out-of-box thinking on trying to figure out how to solve these condo issues. Maybe the states or maybe the cities can have a better way to provide insurance for the builders if they build a condo. Maybe they can give them more incentives, height incentive, maybe more FAR, or maybe more lot coverage if you build a condo, right? Protect the builders, and so that they can actually provide housing so that the medium income people can take that next step for that American dream. My family was able to actually accumulate some wealth because we were able to take that first step. When back in the 80s, you could buy in the Central District where I live, you could buy a house at that time for $30,000. And the average income was like 22. So in 1.5 years, you can actually pay for that house. That's not available right now.
It's a bridge too far.
It's a bridge too
now.
far. Yeah.
The funny thing is that back then you could buy from a Sears catalog, and now almost 100 years later we're back to modular construction.
Oh yeah. In fact, that's why they call them craftsmen. Oh, really? Is because Sears had that article. The craftsman tools. Yeah. That craftsman houses was started because Sears, and that's yeah.
Well, and the legislation needs to change on the Condominium Act because the protections for consumers are so extreme that it actually scares developers from playing their role in a way of a public service. But I mean, it's a market rate opportunity for these developers, and if it doesn't make sense to take the risk, they're more likely to revert to an apartment offering versus a for sale offering because of the Condominium Act, the deposit structure, and of course, the tail on construction defect liabilities. In general, the right idea, but just the weighting between developer risk and gain has just been too difficult to bear. As a result, one of the fastest growing large cities in the United States, downtown Seattle, just moments from where we are right now in the studio, over 40,000 multifamily housing units have been built within walking distance of each other in the last decade. But 94% of that was purpose-built for rent and not for sale. And don't think that these rents are inexpensive either. I mean, they look like a mortgage payment. But the reality is we're just going to have to see what happens with that legislation. I know President Trump has some initiatives that are being considered for first-time home buyers. There may be tax credits or breaks for those sellers to first-time home buyers. It's just an ecosystem that requires more conversation between private, public partnerships, as you say, Tadashi, and maybe this House Bill 1110 is going to be the first step in the right direction, but it could also take many decades to see real benefit too. Tadashi, you've been in land development for all of these years, you've been a homeowner, you've been advising through Evergreen certified other home builders. I mean, these are a bunch of smart people. Why are we in this affordable housing crisis in the first place?
So much to unpack from that, actually. But you're correct. In the public and private sector, I was lucky to really work with some of the best and the brightest in each one of those sectors. But since we are in a affordability crisis right now, there hasn't been any meetings that I've been a part of that I've actually ever seen where they go like, hey, you know what? Let's work together and deliver housing quickly, affordably, and sustainably. It's just like, take example this. In 1930, almost 100 years ago, in New York City, they built the Empire State Building, 102 stories. You know how fast they built it? They built it in 1 year and a month.
Wow.
Permitting 2 months. So they were doing like 14 stories a week. And that's when the public and private sectors work together. I'm working with developers right now in Seattle who it took 18 months to just permit a 6-unit site.
Like that's a design review.
Design review and then public design, yes. And you know that's just unacceptable. But the opportunity is that if we sat down in a room and using AI also right now and leveraging these technologies, because hey, we live in the Northwest with the top technological firms, Realty included, that can actually understand these problems and help these cities and municipalities do code better, permit better, permit quicker, permit more accurately, and deliver projects like it should be. How can we permit a house in 1 month? How can we?
Exactly.
If you're an affordable housing project, hey, you get your permit in 1 month. You know, we need to think together, work together, and with that we can solve the problems, I think, very successfully.
I'm not sure any of these attributes to the cost of housing are going to see much correction soon. I mean, we have a lack of land. The cost of land has only been going up. Cost of entitlements with the red tape, the MHA that you were just speaking of, and the duration it takes to get those entitlements. Cost of financing now with inflation and lending. Cost of construction, I mean, that's only exacerbated by potential tariffs and deportations ahead. You know, many people don't realize that 25 to 30% of what goes into new construction housing is international trade dependent.
Yes.
And I would say about the same percentage of foreign workers, potentially undocumented workers that are in the trade. And then you've got cost of litigation, construction defect claims, insurance. You know, there are those that think you can commute to affordability, but then that brings in other lifestyle compromises. And then it's just the overall supply and demand imbalance. We are just way behind in home building.
Seattle, we're 70,000 units behind already right now. And we're going to have about 250 more thousand people coming to Seattle in the next 20 years. And on the east side, we are in such a hole in actual delivered units right now that we have to work together and provide. So Seattle has to add, 330 on their growth plan units on the east side. They're all trying to add 45,000 units in the next 20 years. And but in order to get there, it's going to take cooperation. But if we do get there, still, even if we meet those margins, it's still not going to add that much affordability because we're just keeping up with the demand. We need to add more and more supply.
I mean, why not just convert all those empty office buildings? I mean, we have 15 million square feet of unleased and sublet space down the street.
Unfortunately, it's very difficult to turn an office building into residential. The way the floor plates are and mechanicals and plumbing and whatnot, it's a big lift, and it'd be easier to tear it down.
Yeah, well, and that's the reality. I mean, it seems to me if they want to expedite development in their backyards, then they should do whatever they can to pre-approve certain widgets. I mean, there is going to be the 100% efficient ADU and DADU design at some point, right? I mean, I would say these Tide Tin Cabin companies are pretty darn close. They've put a lot of thought into the thought per square foot, and that is evident in its design and functionality. But if we know that 350 square foot footprint could fit here, here, and here on certain lots with the setbacks considered, then I don't know why municipalities wouldn't automatically rubber stamp that as an approval, as long as you're building to code and you deliver as promised.
Yeah, just look at the utilities, because the building itself, the engineering, the floor plan is legit. So why pay $20,000 to get it approved again and again and again and wait 6 months every time?
Tadashi, Ofer, what I think you have built is a travel guide for House Bill 1110 in a sense. And it starts in Redmond and it's going to waterfall into the other municipalities that surround us. But you have done the heavy lifting associated with understanding the code. You have created technology through AI that is proprietary to you and your advisors, but you've also created helpful public websites. What is the overall experience that you're hoping to deliver to a would-be seller of a lot that may not understand what all this means to them?
We try to make it, we use the KISS method, keep it stupid simple. So when you type your address in, it will tell you in general if you have potential or don't have potential. Like, you can't do it, forget it, or you have to demolish in order to build something. Okay. Or it will tell you, hey, you can add one or several units in your backyard, contact us for more details. And then on the back end, our agents, out of library of hundreds of different design footprints, we match the right footprints to the lot, and we know in advance what kind of buildings, what kind of structures, what kind of townhomes could fit in. And then the broker can look at the value that's being created from each one of them and find what is the most equity generating option for this property, and without even calling an architect or running any plans. Of course, it has to be validated. You have to eventually go there and see that, it's not next to a cemetery or something.
So there is a human component to this, Tadashi. What would that experience be like for the seller, to work with your advisors?
We're going to be like the HB 1110 Sherpa.
Okay, climb that mountain together.
100%.
Show me the way.
We're going to take you from the very conception to finish of the project and anything in between. Basically, if you're a seller and then you want to know the value of your piece of property, we can help you out there. You can stop at that time. Or if you want to say like, hey, you want to be matched up with a broker to help you sell your piece of property, or wealth management, or you want to partner up with a builder, or you want to sell to a builder, we can do the whole process to make sure you're handheld with the best intelligence. But key, the incredible local experts at Realogics Sotheby's and our very capable builders.
I have noticed that some of those that have already elected to be through your curriculum are some of our best and brightest, most experienced brokers that frankly don't need any new business, but they're doing this because this is the business they're in to better advise their clients. I mean, I can't imagine how valuations are going to going forward without understanding the potential in your backyard through House Bill 1110. So it may never be more important than ever right now to work with a trusted real estate advisor and use AI as an assistance.
If you're not using AI technology and quite frankly becoming an expert at House Bill 1110, you're going to be left behind. You're going to be doing a disservice to your clients for sure if you don't know how to advise them correctly. But it was such a joy to see the high producers, the top brokers, not only in Realogics, but the top brokers in the country are at Realogics. And I understand now why. It's because they see an opportunity. And when they see an opportunity, they act quickly on it. And they could see that our technology at Realty combined with our network at Realogics is unstoppable. And they need to be ahead of it, because if you're not ahead of it, you're behind. And they know that this is something that they can be proud of and something that is going to drive the next wave of sustainability, affordability, and attainability in the Northwest.
Thank you, Tadashi and Ofer, for all of your contributions. This has been News You Can Use. I'm Dean Jones. And to Mike Aboy and the team here at Fox 13 Seattle, we appreciate the use of your podcast here at the Fox Den. To join the conversation, follow Masterplan Media and the Real Estate Roadshow on YouTube and Instagram. We'll see you next time.